Welcome back. President Trump ran on a platform of cutting the deficit. So why on earth does it keep ballooning? A new report by the Commerce Department, get rid of that department, shows our goods trade deficit surged by $891 billion in 2018. That's the highest level in history. Yay, us. The president's critics say that is fiscally irresponsible, but some economists say the president should actually embrace that deficit. So why is this critically important for Americans to understand? There's only one person who can explain. He's the associate professor of economics at the King's College. Brian Brenberg is back. This is Brianomics. So let us discuss.
Trade deficits.
So we've got two deficits here. We got the deficit that we get from spending too much money, from the government spending more than they bring in, and then the trade deficit, which is buying more than we sell.
So let's talk about the trade deficit first, because that's what's been in the news so far. Remember, President Trump ran on decreasing the trade deficit. We saw this past year, it's gone up. Oh no, President Trump hasn't kept his promises. He must be a failure. Not really. Trade deficits often go up in a strong economy because U.S. consumers have money in their pockets. And guess what they do?
They want to buy stuff.
They buy imports. So imports go up. By the same token, investors want to invest in the United States because, hey, the economy's strong. They're pouring dollars in the United States. That pushes up the value of our currency and makes imports for us cheaper, so we continue to buy more. Bottom line, trade deficits.
But a strong dollar is more expensive for other countries
to buy our
American
exports.
Goods.
Okay, so everybody's going after the president. And look, the president did run on this, but the fact is, if you're critiquing the president for a rising trade deficit, you're also giving him credit for a really strong economy. The two go together. So should we care that much about it? Right now, we shouldn't, because it means a strong economy. Over the long term, it could be a problem. If you have big trade barriers, that's an issue. But right now, a rising trade deficit means the U.S. economy is much, much stronger than anything else going on around the world.
All right. So, and we've talked about the last time there was a trade surplus, Gerald Ford was in office. And I don't think that speaks, that was the time in American history where we had the most robust.
If you want to go back and find the times where the trade deficit went down, you go back to the Great Depression, you go back to Gerald Ford, you go back to the Great Recession. Trade deficits decrease when our economy decreases, when things get worse because consumers have less money and because investors say, I don't want to buy U.S. assets. So quit complaining about trade deficits. Do trade barriers matter? Tariffs? Yes. Do things going on in China with intellectual property matter? Absolutely. We should care an awful lot about those things, but don't focus on the trade deficit because sometimes it means
give everything away to China.
No, we don't. It's
like putting out before you're engaged. Come on, put a ring on it, Brian. Everyone knows that.
I'm all for putting a ring on it,
Thank you very much. A decent young man, Brian Brenberg. But, let's talk a little bit about the deficit back home, the other deficit.
So we ought to care about this one. And we've got the budget coming out next week, President Trump's proposed budget. And here, the headlines you're going to see is President Trump wants to slash spending. Here's what he wants to do.
Which is great.
Yeah, that would be great, actually.
It's not true.
Here's what he's actually asking for. A 5% cut on non-defense discretionary spending. That sounds big and ugly, right?
Very small part of the budget.
It means about 1/6 of our budget.
Yes.
He wants to cut by 5%.
Yeah. That's not a lot of
nothing.
No.
And yet you're going to see journalists and you're going to see politicians scream that he's slashing spending. Would that he slash spending? He's not doing it.
No.
This is nothing. And if we live in an environment where 5% of 1/6 of your budget is slashing spending, forget about it. We are hosed.
We're never going to get out of this.
And that's the environment we're in right now.
And the bill hasn't even come yet for the non-discretionary spending.
No, it hasn't even come. We've got interest on the debt right now at about $400 billion
a year. $400 billion.
Nobody has $400 billion.
Even Jeff Bezos in all his pictures, they don't have $400 billion.
And he's not going to get $400 billion with more pictures either. So we're in trouble. So trade deficits, don't worry about it. Budget deficits, yes. And we ought to be complaining about politicians who are saying 5% cut is something we can't handle.
You know what goes up when there's a good economy? Trade deficits and immigration. I know we're not supposed to talk about the two things that the president says he doesn't like, but who doesn't love a good economy? I love a good economy. Do you love a good economy?
Employers love a good economy.
Absolutely.
Employment goes up when trade deficits go up.
And so do wages, because there aren't enough people to fill all the jobs. Brian Brenberg, you're everything and more. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Very good.